All right, check your calendars. It is Saturday, January 31st, 2026.
The week is done.
Finally, the trading desks are closed, the algorithms are cooling down, and we are just staring at a mountain of earnings reports that are frankly making my head spin.
Mine too.
If you dared to look at your portfolio yesterday, you probably saw a sea of green. I mean, especially if you're heavy on tech, the NASDAQ is practically melting upwards.
Or it's the last gasp before the oxygen runs out.
Ah, see, there's the skepticism already.
Look, I know you're celebrating the share prices, and I get it, green is good. But we have to look at the macro dashboard because it is flashing red.
Okay, what's red?
The US dollar, for one, it got absolutely hammered last year, down 7% on a trade-weighted basis in 2025. That is a massive debasement.
Sure, but that helps exporters.
It helps exporters, but it hurts consumers. And consumer confidence in the U.S. just plunged to a 12-year low. A 12-year low. We're talking worse than the depths of the pandemic.
So people are worried.
They're worried about prices, war, the labor market. So while you're looking at record stock highs, I'm looking at a consumer who's tapped out and a currency that's losing its shirt.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is the classic wall of worry that bull markets love to climb. You're looking at sentiment, I'm looking at execution. We had earnings this week that suggest the AI revolution is finally moving from hype to hardware.
I'll give you that. We have legacy tech giants, resurrecting themselves from the dead. And we have a chip sector that is basically printing money. So the question for this deep dive is simple. Are these earnings real? And is the growth sustainable?
Exactly. Or are we just burning cash in a data center bonfire?
It is not just a bonfire. It might be an incinerator. Because when you peel back the layers on these reports, specifically the capital expenditure, the capex, you start to see a very, very dangerous game being played.
Okay, let's start right there. The capex wars.
Yeah.
The headline grabber this week has to be ASML.
Oh, absolutely.
If you want to know if the AI boom is over, you ask the company that makes the machines that make the chips. And ASML just dropped a bombshell.
Their net order booking.
More than doubled. Quarter over quarter. It doubled.
And the stock reacted, obviously. But let's just pause and explain why that booking number matters so much.
Yeah, go for it.
We're not just talking about, generic factory equipment. ASML has a total monopoly on extreme ultraviolet lithography EUV machines.
The only game in town.
The only game in town. Without these specific machines, you cannot physically manufacture the high-end chips that run AI models. So when their orders double, it means the entire industry is locking in capacity for years to come.
Exactly. The stock is up over 30% just since the start of the year on that news. They're projecting sales growth of, 19% for 2026? These machines cost hundreds of millions of dollars each.
So they're betting the farm.
They're betting the farm on chip demand for 2027 and 2028. This is the smoking gun that the infrastructure build-out is nowhere near finished.
But who is buying them? See, that is where the risk lies. We saw Microsoft's earnings this week.
Right.
They revealed a huge increase in spending on data centers.
Right.
Then you have Meta. They came out and said they're explicitly doubling their AI capital expenditure this year. Doubling.
These are astronomical numbers.
They are. And my concern is what I call the productivity paradox.
You mean the idea that we're spending all this money but not getting more work done?
Precisely. There was a benchmark survey released this week, the Boss Class survey. They polled executives in the US, UK, Germany.
Okay.
The result, 86% of bosses say AI has had no impact on labor productivity over the past 3 years.
None. Zero.
None. So you have Microsoft and Meta spending tens of billions on GPUs and data centers, but the actual end users in the corporate world aren't seeing the efficiency gains yet. That is a massive disconnect.
But isn't that just a lag effect? I mean, these technologies take time to adopt. Plus, look at the pivot in what they're buying. It's not just NVIDIA anymore.
No, it's custom silicon now.
All right, Amazon and Google are pouring money into their own chips to try and control their own destiny. That tells me they see this as a long-term utility, like electricity, not a fad.
But electricity bills have to be paid. And in financial terms, this spending is a margin crusher.
How so?
If you double your capex, your depreciation costs skyrocket. If your revenue doesn't grow fast enough to cover that, your margins collapse. Investors panicked at Microsoft's spend for exactly this reason.
They're asking where's the ROI?
Exactly. And there's a physical constraint here too, energy.
Yeah.
You can buy all the ASML machines you want, but if you can't plug them in because the power grid is maxed out, you have a very expensive paperweight.
To be fair, investors didn't panic as much with Meta. Meta reported record revenue.
The top line was strong, yes.
So it feels like The market is picking winners and losers based on who can monetize while they spend. It's an arms race. If you don't spend, you die. If you spend too much, you might also die, but at least you go down fighting.
That is a very expensive way to stay alive. And speaking of staying alive, you mentioned legacy tech earlier.
Oh, I have been waiting to get to this. This stock of the week, for me, has to be IBM.
Big glue. Really?
The one and only. For years, people treated IBM like a value trap, a dinosaur consulting firm. But look at the chart.
The share price has doubled in 3 years.
Doubled. It's no longer trading like a dusty old service company. It's trading at a PE ratio similar to Microsoft and the high-growth software champions.
That is a stunning reversal. Usually when a company that old tries to pivot, it breaks a hip. What's actually driving it?
It's the execution of the hybrid cloud strategy. I mean, it goes back years to the Red Hat acquisition.
Okay.
They realized they couldn't beat Amazon on public cloud, so they went for the messy middle, helping banks and governments run their legacy systems and new AI tools together. And that stuff is incredibly sticky.
Once you're in a bank's infrastructure, you don't get kicked out.
Never. Revenue was up 8% for 2025, net profit up 14%. They finally figured out how to be a growth stock again. Plus, they pay a dividend.
I will grant you IBM. That looks like a genuine operational turnaround where the boring business became the essential business. But I have to play the skeptic here, because not every legacy turnaround is real. Look at Boeing.
Boeing reported their highest revenue since 2018, $23.9 billion? That sounds like a turnaround.
It sounds like one, but you have to read the footnotes. Yes, they reported a net profit their first in 3 years, but it was an accounting mirage. They only turned a profit because they sold off their digital aviation business. It was a one-time asset sale. If you strip that out, they recorded another loss.
So it's just financial engineering?
It's survival mode disguised as success.
Right.
Selling your digital aviation arm is like a carpenter selling his power tools to pay the rent.
You're eating your seed corn.
Exactly. You might make the payment this month, but how do you build anything next month? You cannot compare the quality of IBM's earnings, which are organic, with Boeing's.
That's a crucial distinction. Quality of earnings. Speaking of which, through efficiency, what's your take on Amazon?
They're cutting another 16,000 jobs. And specifically citing AI adoption as the reason.
Right. And they're closing the physical Amazon Fresh and Amazon Go stores. To me, this is bullish for margins.
You think so?
Absolutely. They tried the physical retail experiment. It didn't scale, so they're cutting the losses ruthlessly, converting some to Whole Foods, which works, and focusing on same-day delivery. It is brutal for the employees, obviously, but for EPS, it's ruthless efficiency.
It is. But let's connect this back to the macro picture. Amazon is cutting costs because they see labor as a liability they can automate. But if every company does this, who is left to buy the products?
Right, the consumer gets squeezed.
It just reinforces that productivity paradox point. Amazon is cutting jobs because they claim AI can handle routine positions. But if that boss class survey is right and productivity isn't actually rising, then Amazon might just be cutting capacity, not just fat.
Which creates deflationary pressure on wages.
While we have inflationary pressure on goods. And that brings us to the supply chain.
Because if you're holding European manufacturing stocks or even looking at the automotive sector in places like the Czech Republic, there is a massive storm brewing in the logistics world.
You're talking about the dark fleet.
I keep seeing this term. What exactly is happening out there on the oceans?
This is one of those invisible inflation drivers that nobody talks about until it hits the shelf price. We're tracking Russia's shadow fleet of oil tanker ships used to evade sanctions.
Okay.
The data on this is, well, it's terrifyingly inefficient.
Inefficient how? A ship is a ship, isn't it?
Not when it's trying to be a ghost. When a tanker gets added to a European blacklist, it becomes 30% less productive.
30%.
If it hits an American blacklist, it becomes 70% less productive.
Why?
Because they can't take direct routes. They have to sail the long way around. They have to stop in the middle of the ocean, turn off their transponders, and physically pump oil from one ship to another to hide where it came from.
A ship-to-ship transfer. That sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is. These are old resting ships, often with no proper insurance.
Yeah.
But economically, it means a voyage that should take 20 days now takes 45. That just ties up global shipping capacity. And supply chain 101, if you reduce capacity, price goes up. It's a hidden tax on everything. And here's the anomaly that proves the market is broken. old, decrepit ships, these dark ships, are fetching higher resale prices than they should. That's the reverse of normal economics.
The asset that lets you cheat the system commands a premium.
Exactly. And this inefficiency keeps inflation higher for longer, which keeps interest rates higher for longer.
So while we're all cheering tech stocks, the cost of moving energy is structurally increasing. That's not great. But there is a flip side.
There is.
This geopolitical fracturing. If you're an investor looking for where the trade flow is going next, you have to look at the deal that just dropped between the EU and India.
This is significant. It's basically the antidote to the chaos we just described.
It's huge. After 2 decades of talking, the EU and India finally shook hands. They're removing or decreasing tariffs on 97% of goods. 97%.
That's almost everything. And for our listeners tracking the European industrial base, especially the automotive suppliers in Central Europe like the Czech Republic, listen to this. Tariffs on European cars entering India are dropping from 110% down to 10%. 110 to 10. That is a massive new market opening up.
It's a diversification play. Europe knows it can't rely on China anymore, both as a factory and as a customer.
The Chinese EV market is saturated with domestic brands.
Completely. So Europe is pivoting to India. It's a China plus one strategy, but at a continental level. For European manufacturers, this is the lifeline they needed. It's a long-term play, but if you're holding stocks in Volkswagen or their suppliers, this is the first good news on the trade front in a long, long time.
I agree it's a bright spot. But we have to talk about the currency those cars are being sold in, or rather the currency turmoil that underpins all of this. We mentioned the dollar is down, but the real drama is in Asia.
You mean the yen?
The yen. The U.S. dollar fell 7% last year, yes, but the yen.
Wow.
The yen is the canary in the coal mine for the entire global financial system.
See, I look at the yen and I see the trade of the year. It's been hammered so hard, it is undervalued by every metric. Look at the Big Mac index. I know it's silly, but it works. It says the yen is roughly 50% undervalued.
It's cheap, but why is it cheap?
Because of the rate differential. But look, the Bank of Japan is finally hiking. They're at 0.75%. That's still low, but it's not negative anymore. The gap between U.S. rates and Japanese rates is shrinking.
It is.
So if the Fed cuts and the BOJ hikes, the yen has to rip higher. If you're a currency trader, you have to be long yen here.
That is the technical argument, but you're missing the systemic risk. Do you know why a rising yen is so dangerous for the stock market?
The carry trade.
The carry trade. Walk us through that.
Okay. For 20 years, hedge funds have borrowed money in Japan for basically free 0% interest and used that money to buy high-yielding assets like U.S. tech stocks.
Borrow in yen, convert to dollars, buy NVIDIA.
Exactly. If the yen rises in value or if Japanese interest rates go up, that trade blows up. They have to pay back the loan in more expensive yen. And to do that,
they have to sell the U.S. assets.
So a rally in the yen could actually trigger a sell-off in the NASDAQ. Precisely. You cannot separate the currency from the equity market. And there's a deeper problem. Japan's net debt is 130% of GDP, highest in the rich world.
If interest rates rise, the government's interest payments on that debt explode. They might not be able to afford higher rates. So the central bank might be forced to print money just to buy bonds to keep rates low. If they do that, the yen doesn't rally, it collapses.
So it's a volatility loop that spills over into everything. Okay, that is sobering. You're saying a currency fluctuation in Tokyo could force a liquidation of AI stocks in San Francisco.
That is exactly what I am saying. High risk, high reward.
Well, high risk seems to be the theme of the week. Whether it's ASML machines that need more power than a small city, or dark fleets hiding oil, or the Japanese debt trap.
So where does that leave us?
I think it leaves us in a stock picker's paradise, but a macro investor's nightmare. You have to own the companies building the pipes, ASML, the semiconductors, because the demand is real. You have to look for the genuine turnarounds like IBM, where the cash flow is verified, not engineered like Boeing.
And you have to look for the new trade corridors.
Like the EU-India link, because the old globalization is dead.
And from my seat, I'm just urging caution. The consumer is cracking. The shipping lanes are inefficient and inflationary. And the carry trade, unwind, is a gun pointed at the head of this rally.
The market is pricing in perfection.
Perfection in AI, and the productivity data just isn't there yet to support it.
So what's the final takeaway for the listener? What's the one thought to leave them with?
This raises a question that honestly keeps me up at night. We talked about AI taking jobs at Amazon, but if 86% of bosses say AI hasn't improved productivity yet, are we about to see a capex apocalypse?
A capex pop.
Imagine a scenario where the Microsofts and Metas of the world suddenly say, wait, this isn't paying off, and they turn off the spending tap. The chip sector crashes, cloud growth evaporates, and the market collapses. That is the crash scenario no one is pricing in.
That is a terrifying thought to end on. If you are holding those chip stocks, maybe take a look at your exposure this weekend. Check those trailing stops. As always, the deep dive is here to help you navigate the chaos. Thanks for listening.
Stay safe out there.